With that being said, I'd like to introduce the architects that have been leading out on the project. Up on the stage, we have Brian Parker on the left, or on my left, yeah, and Scott Lader. Other architects involved in the project are Ben Hansen, Tyson Stevens, and the whole team at MHCM. They've just been fantastic. So I'll turn the time over to them, and thank you for your attendance tonight.
Keep in mind that we're still in the process of designing the school. Nothing is set in stone at this point, and that's why Tom mentioned the question and answer. We're happy to adapt as necessary. We really want this to be your building. As you can imagine, this current facility is 50, 60 years old almost. We are joking because there's a water bucket back there catching the rain. The boiler's going down. This building has served its purpose, but we want to give you another building that will serve 50, 60 years in the future. So we're excited about this. We're going to run through a couple things. You saw some hints about what we'll be looking at as you walked in on the boards. So I want to talk a little bit about the process, in particularly how we got to where we got to with where the building is. As you can imagine, there's a lot of complexity in terms of pulling together the program and aspects of the high school. And we want to talk briefly about how we can get from here to when the doors open to the class of 2021, school year of 2021, and what that process will look like. So this is your existing site. As a point of reference, this is about a 35 to 36 acre site. If we were to typically build on a green farmer's field, we would see a high school site of about 60 acres. And so right off the get-go, we realized that building anywhere on Brighton is going to be a challenge. It was pretty clear from early meetings with the community as well as your board members that we didn't want to impact school activities, that we needed to maintain the current programs that were happening on site. That included specifically the beautiful location of that football field. There's some heritage there. You've got fantastic views out to the south and to the west. We wanted to maintain those. Additionally, some of the challenges we started to explore was the 30, 35-foot grade change that happens along that edge. It presents a challenge in terms of where do you put a new building on this existing 35-acre site and still keep the kids here. So we began to explore in 3 dimensions and with computer modeling where we could actually build roughly about 400,000 square feet of school building. Additionally, what we wanted to make sure is that the contractor, and Hogan Construction is here representing, they will be the CMGC and the construction manager throughout this process, but we wanted to make sure that they were set up correctly in terms of how we would potentially phase the activities on site. So what you're seeing here is just as is. You'll start seeing some activity starting in June of this year. That activity includes prepping for some of the building pads. You'll see in just a second, the road that leads down to the pit parking lot will go away. And so they'll begin filling that piece in. They'll give you some temporary parking lots. They'll get site fencing. They'll make sure that the separation between students and construction people is very clear and defined. So really, the fun starts September of 2018. And keep in mind that these dates are very preliminary right now. We're going through the design process, and as soon as we understand when the best time to bid this project is, we'll put this out on the streets in a competitive bid situation. And that we anticipate that in September, that's where we really start to rock and roll. The building in the first phase is divided up into 2 different sections. On your right-hand side, you're seeing an expansion of the athletic facility. This would include maintaining the existing Bandit building right there. And the new athletics building would somewhat hug around the corners of that building and expand to the south with the new field house piece. When we say field house, that's those large kind of open metal structures that you see, turf surface. It allows for 24/7 if you really want to, and 365 access to kind of play activities. Additionally, what's going to occur is a new performing and visual arts and CTE wing. This becomes kind of the first step in stitching together the entire site. You'll notice that this is really how we bridge that deep ravine down to the pit parking lot. The building starts to step up to take some of that grade change. And so on one side, and we'll look at this closer in the plans, you're going to have a 2-story building from the south, and on the front of that, you'll have a 2-story. And so they'll kind of mesh and meet with the grades. That work will take approximately 16 months or so, and really it's a pretty fast and furious process to get those two key chunks started. Additionally, what will happen is that the south baseball and softball fields will be retooled and reworked to provide a new service access to what will be the improved pit parking lot eventually. As that work completes,
Can I chime in real quick?
Yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely.
Go back one slide if you can. Well, something I want to notice that we also took into account is, so for the first 16 months of construction, no classrooms are impacted. We keep all of our gymnasiums for activities. We keep every single classroom untouched while we build these two structures. Really, the only thing we need to accommodate during this phase is to provide safe access for the students past these construction structures to the new building. But no teachers or displays, no academic areas are impacted. We can do this while school is in session. And I think that was an important part of the phasing decisions in this model.
as we shift into the second phase, this is actually kind of an extension of the first. The phase one demo, you're seeing some of that area that Tom mentioned. And now that we've got those spaces in the new building, we can push or move those teachers out into the new spaces. And so that would mean that a portion of the small circle, we kind of affectionately call that the small circle, as well as a chunk of the large circle. So as a point of reference, the media center is right there. Administration is kind of in this zone. And we would take a good chunk of that, including some of the athletic facilities, because now that we've got that new building, we can shift those roles into there. What that allows us to do is build the remainder of the building, which in this case is an extension of some of those classroom functions. We have classrooms, we have labs, we have administration and commons and media center. So that really stitches the rest of the building and sits perched up on the top of that hill just above, if you can imagine, kind of where the home bleachers sit right now. Additionally, what we're looking at is how we can bridge between those two separate buildings, between the athletic and the main building. And so you'll see a new Bengal plaza. And that'll as well take up some of the grade change that occurs between Bengal Boulevard, the street, and the Bengal field. That work will go all the way through the summer of 2021, so another 16 months to construct that building. As that wraps up, we then shift all those remaining functions in the existing building into the new structure and retool and refinish the existing site and finalize the site work. What that means is you're left with a completely new building right over the top of where your existing building was, which is pretty awesome. The views, and we'll look at this in just a second, but the views, the site positioning, kind of the access to daylight, some of the more sustainable aspects of the building, this is really where it wants to be. And the strategy that we've kind of come up with the district's help is to make this happen in two chunks. And really the only impact to teacher activity is that shift between the building, between phase one and phase two. So this is an overall site plan, looking at how the new site would feel. Bengal Boulevard is still a very strong promenade to the building. We met with the city not too long ago, and they talked about a connection that they would like to have happen between their plaza space. So from a pedestrian standpoint, there would be a safe crossing point to cross that road and then enter into the main building, kind of the main front door right there. Additionally, you're seeing some highlighted drop-off zones for vehicular traffic. We really try to separate the bus traffic from the kind of the day-to-day student, faculty, people who are going to be here on site, and then the drop-off traffic. And so we have a pretty extensive drop-off zone along the front of the building, in addition to a secondary drop-off zone out front. So if you really want to drop and go, there's kind of an access point and a way to do that. One of the challenges with that 35-acre site is how do you fit parking? And we've tried to maximize as much parking on the site as possible. You're currently at about 750, is that right, Tom?
780.
780. And with this new plan, we're pushing up about 850, 860. We're still kind of retooling some of that. It's actually better distributed. You're seeing an expansion of that south parking lot, which would facilitate game day, baseball and softball fields. You're seeing kind of a reconfigured pit parking. I think the pit parking needs a new term because it'll be kind of the premier parking as you enter into that building. and then new front door parking areas, as well as some separate loading and unloading space for the back of house auditorium function. So what does the building look like at the inside? So if you just take that plan that we were just looking at, rotate it just slightly, what you're seeing here is the first level, and we've got these posted in the lobby as well if you want to look at specific details. We really just want to highlight where the key building elements are within the building. So on the left-hand side, so in this case the west, you have your performing and CTE, performing arts, visual arts, and CTE. This would include a reworked or a new auditorium piece with seating capacity for about 1,150. Your current space is about 1,100, so it's comparable in size, covering where you don't have any sort of loft or fly loft. Now you're going to get a new full fly loft, as well as better back of stage areas. One of the cool features of the design is this access to an outdoor patio space that overlooks the valley. That's directly adjacent to some of the art spaces. So you can imagine those activities bleeding out onto that art patio space, and it'd be kind of nice. The main front door, like we highlighted, would be right here, and access to the main street of the building. Additionally, there would be a secondary access for the performing arts, so that those buildings, those functions could be separated. They could be shut down. If a portion of the building needs to be active and a portion needs to be shut down, that could happen. As you go along that main street, you're greeted by classroom pods or neighborhoods, and each one of those is secured and separated off of the main pedestrian traffic by a set of access doors that can be closed if necessary in the event of emergency. And within that core learning community, you have 6, sometimes 7 classroom spaces that feed into an open collaboration space. And that open collaboration space becomes an area for team teaching. It could be an area for tutoring to break out. There's some transparency between the classroom and the collaboration space. We actually work closely with the teachers and with Tom and the district to understand what that balance was, with that transparency, to make sure it was kind of at the right place and right size. On the left-hand side, as you enter the building, would be the new commons and cafeteria space. And we'll see this in just a second, but as you enter into that kind of new 3-story space, all you're going to see is views to the valley, which is going to be pretty fantastic. Rather than entering into kind of a claustrophobic building, there'll be lots of views, lots of daylight. It'll be really a positive space. So on that main building, as we start to stack, we actually stack 3 times for the main classroom floor. So the main building is 3 stories. We looked at this based on land efficiency, but also the efficiency of the steel structure that we're going to be using. There's some cost benefit as well as some time benefit to building with steel. So we start to stack those classroom wings. We get a new media center that can be perched on that northeast corner. And as we move up, there'll be a 3rd level where we would pick up an additional kind of multi-purpose. If you've been to Jordan High School, their tech atrium, that kind of style of space, a larger multi-purpose gathering room. If you look on the west side of the building, again, we step down those 2 levels to make up some of the grade. And so we start to get the CTE and shop functions. There'll be a series of classrooms, as well as some fairly large open shops, and those have yet to be defined in terms of what those could be. The idea with the entire building is that we make these spaces as flexible as possible, so that if there's changes in teaching philosophy or how your students or even the faculty want to approach this, the building could adapt to those changes. So that's really the main building. The athletic building, we're showing everything all together because we really feel like we need to think about this campus as one. So a portion of this green mass is actually the existing Bengal building, which is right here. And within that space, you have a number of teaching classrooms or teaching spaces, as well as weight and fitness. There's some locker rooms. So we are adding to that a main gym, a secondary gym, as well as the field house. We'll look at the grades in just a second and how you enter into that, but you would enter at a 2nd level or kind of a balcony level running track space, and then the seating would tier down from that area. It really helps with some of the security features that the district likes to implement in terms of keeping kids off of the court and things like that, as well as providing kind of a cool place to watch the game. Safety and security is always on our mind, regardless of kind of the national conversation. It's something that we think about 24/7. We want to make sure that we're creating environments that are safe and secure for your kids, and that we're addressing the needs not only now but in the future. So what we have here, and again, this information is out in the lobby as well, is just a very rough diagram of some of the security features for the building. Primarily, what you'll see is that we try to look at both passive and active security, that as you enter in the building, you realize that you're in a secure space. And the way we really start that off is by entering into the building through a secure vestibule. This would be a route through vestibule that you enter in there and you would need to check into the administration area before you enter the main building. Additionally, each one of the classroom wings would have the ability to be separated from that main thoroughfare. This allows for the pedestrian traffic, the kind of the high activity areas to occur within that main street, but more of the slower teaching activities to occur within the learning community. It also reduces the distraction factor that students could have as they're sitting in their classroom here and not necessarily concerned about what's happening on that main street. So there is a separation, there's a buffer between that. Additionally, what happens is in the event of emergency, Tom and his kind of key staff members would have a card reader, and they'd have the ability to lock down those learning communities or those wings. We also provide secondary exits out of each one of those learning communities, so in the event of emergency, fire, whatever that may be, kids can get out of the building just as quick as they can under the direction of the district's standards. You're seeing some of the exits. The thought is that we try to get kids out as fast as we can if they need to. And so the security exits and highlighted points here, around the building allow kind of free flow for day to day. Again, the building would be locked down and set by Tom and his staff and the district in terms of when card reader access is required. For the example of when kids leave for seminary or to go to CTE classes offsite. But day-to-day traffic would filter through that main front door, which promotes a sense of security. So, put all the pieces back together, just kind of as a refresher. This is the overall site, and maybe to highlight the key features again. The Performing Arts and CTE wing here, the main classroom area. We have the media center, the administration, the cafeteria, and then the athletics building. We get pretty excited about stuff like this just because there's not a bad place to put a building on this site. If you look at the views to the north, to the east, I mean, really you can't go wrong. And as we started to kind of conceptualize what the building may look like, and these are very early, we've started to hopefully reflect some of the academic tradition that the existing building had and that the new buildings across the district have, as well as position students who will be entering the school to have that feel more of a higher ed space, that as they transition to university work, they're very familiar with that because their building feels like that as well. What you're seeing here is the new front door to the Brighton High School. 3-story addition, the classroom wings on the one side and the media center on the left-hand side. In terms of materials, we're looking at kind of a more earthy tone palette that will reflect not only the existing building, but some of the landscape elements. We're looking at pulling some of the internal themes from your adjacent peaks, your canyons, things like that. And these renders are out in the lobby, and we'd be happy to talk in more detail about them. As we mentioned, this one is actually the art plaza, so if you can picture those spaces, those art spaces, filtering out onto that plaza, looking towards the valley, overlooking the new field, or the field. This is a kind of a conceptual idea of what that Bengal plaza could be that stitches between the existing, or excuse me, the athletics building and the new main building. The grade changes allow us to do some fun things in terms of terracing, providing some outdoor seating. That could be a great place for a pep rally. It also becomes kind of a control checkpoint as you get into the new stadium. And we will be reworking the home bleachers to provide a little more seating on there as well, which is what you're seeing here. So that building really just perches fantastically up on the site. The 3-story on the left-hand side, a series of kind of ADA or accessible ramps and stairs to get you down to that home bleacher with the Bengal building on the right-hand side there. So we're excited. As I said, this is going to be a fantastic school. I think the district has positioned themselves well, that this will be an example across the state for the way that buildings should be built. Some of the thoughts and ideas that are coming out of this exercise. We can't wait for 2021 when Hogan wraps up all their work and we have the grand ribbon cutting. We feel like we've got a good strategy to get us to that point, and it'll be a process. But we feel like we can keep the kids on site, we can keep them safe, we can create a safe and inviting building at the end of the day that'll be secure and provide for the educational needs of your students.